Welcome back, welcome back. For over 200 years we've lived in a Western-made world, wherever we come from, in which being modern meant being Western. But this is about to change. With the rise of China, India and the Asian tiger economies, modernity will no longer be something exclusive to the West. Far from it. According to author Martin Jacques and his new book, When China Rules the World, China is the centre of this new era of contested modernity and is getting ready to end the global dominance of the West. So how will that happen? Is this the end of the Western world as we know it? Martin Jacques joins me now, and the book says it right there. It says when China rules the world and not if China rules the world. It's only a question of when, is it?
In all likelihood, yes, I think that's the case. If you look at the Goldman Sachs projections for the size of economies, in 2027, China will overtake the United States in terms of GDP to have the largest economy in the world. But even more...
2027.
Not so long. But I think even more extraordinary projects that in 2050, which of course is a bit further down the road, the Chinese economy will be almost twice the size of the American economy.
Almost twice the size. And so that will be... Will China by that point be dominant all over the world?
No. I don't think it's going to be as simple as that. I don't think it's going to be as simple as that either in terms of speed, and I don't think it's going to be as simple as that in terms of Chinese ascendancy. When I say rule the world, let's say use that as a metaphor, because America's ruled the world, or large parts of the world.
As in the Harry Seacombe recording, If I Ruled the World.
Yes. But I think that we will see a steady process of rising Chinese influence, and not just economic. People understand that China's on the rise economically. What they don't understand is the political and cultural consequences as well, because China will also become politically and culturally extremely influential.
Will it become by then, by 2050, a democracy?
I think that China will become, in all probability, more transparent, more open, and its internal governance will become more accountable. In the longer run, I would expect Chinese governance to still be quite distinctive from Western governance. I think it's an illusion to regard the sort of Western systems to be of inevitably of universal applicability, but there will nonetheless be a rising process of popular involvement.
And what effect will that expansion in power and money of China have on all of our viewers in the other 100 countries who are watching right now? What effect will it have on the world?
Well, I think there'll be lots of different effects. Chinese companies will become very familiar to us in all our markets, as they are already in some markets. The demand for from China for natural resources, which impinges enormously on countries where that is their economic strength, will continue to be very important. China will develop, as it has started to already, much closer economic relations with Africa, partly for the same reason of raw materials, Latin America, Central Asia, and so on. If you live in East Asia, you already know a lot about the Chinese economy, because the Chinese economy is rapidly becoming the biggest marker for every single country in East Asia, which is already the largest economic region in the world. Chinese overseas investment, which was in 2000 very, very low, has risen exponentially. And in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, Chinese overseas investment will overtake that of the United States and become extremely important all over the place. And then there's the cultural side and so on, which is, for example, I think we'll witness the rise of Mandarin, Chinese, as a language which is important to learn.
One last thought. Do you fear, should people fear this change in the world by the year 2050 or 2027? Or should they welcome it? Or should they stay neutral?
It's difficult to predict what the consequences are going to be. I think that it's not really a political question. I think that these great changes do happen. No one ever rules forever. British rule. The sun eventually set on the British Empire, and likewise the United States. And Greek civilization no longer reigns, and Chinese civilization and the Fertile Crescent. This happens in history. So this is going to happen, and I think that there will be probably good things about it and negative things. I think it'll be most difficult of all for the West, because the West is so used to being the dominant factor in the world, and all the global furniture has been Western furniture. So to start seeing items of furniture which are no longer familiar in the global world, for example, the replacement of the dollar in time by the RMB, the Chinese currency, will be very difficult.
And still, they haven't caught up with us at cricket yet, have they, in this country or around the world in lots of sports?
No.
There's some hope there. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for that view of the future. And now, God is dead. That's what the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche announced over a century ago. And for a time it seemed as if faith would become a thing of the past, overtaken by communism or capitalism or even consumerism. But as we begin the 21st century, religion is on the rise, it seems. From Turkey to Texas, Beijing to Brazil, people are embracing faith and making it an important part of their lives. Or so say the authors of the new book, God is Back. One of them, who also happens to be the editor-in-chief of The Economist, is John Micklethwait, who's with me now. Welcome very much, John.
Well, thank you for having me.
Is it worldwide, this religion on the way back?
I think it's worldwide with one big exception, which is Western Europe. I was brought up in Western Europe, and my co-author was as well. And what was odd is once you actually look around the world, what we were always taught, which was basically the more modern a country gets, the more secular it gets, the less important religion is. And that's been the abiding sort of, I suppose, faith of Western intellectuals for a long time. It just isn't true. It's true of Western Europe, certainly not true of America. It's not true of Asia. It's not true of South America or Africa. And the book, for instance, begins in China. China, totally ruled by communists. Now there's probably as many as 100 million Christians in China, more Christians than are members of the Communist Party. And beyond that, it's also on the way, I think, to becoming the world's biggest Muslim country. There are already more Muslims in China than there are in Saudi Arabia. So wherever you look, you see religion keep on coming back. And that's what interested us. It was a book written journalistically by two people who went out to go and look at this thing. And it was very much God is Back was a conclusion rather than something we set out to prove. So from that perspective, it's quite an odd book. Most people come into this with preconceived ideas.
And I mean, you've got a situation where the attitude to religion between America, for instance, and Britain and Europe is rather different, isn't it? In the sense that as George W. Bush's vote showed, it's quite popular in politics to be religious in America. In fact, this is almost in some places compulsory. And whereas here, people who admit to caring about their faith are looked at a bit suspiciously.
Well, Blair famously said, "We don't do God." Although it's interesting now, that's what he spends a huge amount of his time doing. So I think it is coming back into European politics. But what's interesting to me about American politics, you're absolutely dead right. If you look at the numbers for what sort of people would vote for in America, an atheist is the hardest person to get elected. A self-proclaimed atheist would have almost impossible to get elected in America. But I think there's a mistake sometimes in looking at George W. Bush and thinking that's what American religion is like. And I think actually, strangely, Barack Obama might turn out to be a much better salesman for American Christianity than Bush was, to the extent when people saw Bush, they saw somebody who seemed to be sort of angry, who'd had a difficult youth, on the bottle, turned to God and chose a rather sort of messianic version of religion. The idea of Barack Obama, here was a young, clever, well-educated guy in Chicago looking for some kind of meaning in his life and finding it in a Chicago suburb. I think that is really the main way in which American religion keeps on growing, and that potentially is something which actually could be exportable, I think.
And what about in terms of attitudes to religion around the world? Is God back in every religion, or is there a running order? I remember doing a consumer's guide to religion, or that was about trying to pick the best religion. Is there a winning religion, one that's winning more than others at the moment, or is there someone in the relegation zone?
Well, it's a very good way to put it. If you look at the 20th century, the two religions which really bounded ahead were, one, Islam, which did very well, but secondly, actually, the real winner was Pentecostalism. Pentecostalism, founded in Los Angeles in 1910 by a one-eyed black guy in the back streets of Los Angeles, now has, say, 600 million people, depending on how you measure it, of revivalists of different sorts. And that is spreading. And I think the type of religion which is spreading, we would probably argue Christianity stands a better chance this century than Islam, because it's perhaps come more to terms with modernity. But the real dominant model, the one which is going everywhere, is the American one, which is based around pluralism. As long as you can have religions that can compete, that is what's modern, that's what's different. It's very interesting, you go back to America, we all assume America was founded by Puritans. Well, it was, but before the American Revolution, America wasn't very religious. It was about the same as Europe. It's only after the Revolution, when they divided church from state, and the Methodists, which I think you have some connections with, the Methodists converted an eighth of the population within a generation.
And in conclusion, your mag, there's this week's mag, as you see, of The Economist. Iran rises up, and you've got your editorial about it. Are you, it's a dangerous moment to say, but are you encouraged by what's happened in Iran this week, or dismayed?
I think I'm nervously encouraged. I mean, obviously, I think you have to be dismayed by what happened in the election, because most of the evidence is that some element of cheating went on. There looks to be some strong element of a stolen election. You look at individual areas where these people, where the opposition had always done well, the votes have gone down precipitously. The advantage of all this is that it opens up new opportunities. I mean, it's very interesting. Iran has always been difficult to read. You know, years ago, again, the book we mentioned.
Unlike The Economist.
Unlike The Economist, that's a nice way to put it. But it's a very hard thing to read. Most people don't have as good an intelligence. The Americans very obviously don't, because they haven't been there. And so trying to work out which way this country will go is very, very difficult.
Thank you very much indeed, John, for being with us, and God be with you. And it seems an appropriate greeting, doesn't it? And God be with you all, because this is the last programme of this series. But for the next couple of weeks, we'll be showing you some of the highlights that you've wanted to see again, the best interviews and so on that we've done. And then we'll be back after the summer break. That's in fact the first week in September. We'll be back the first Friday in September for another Frost Over the World season. I hope after seeing these two highlight shows, you'll join us then as well. All the best for now. Bye-bye.